Hi, I'm Kelly. As a life coach, I've noticed that the work I do with people isn't about their relationships or their jobs. It isn't about their kids or even how to find a way to get all the laundry done. All the work we do together centers around finding the answer to one simple question. What does it mean to live a fulfilled life? Join me as I explore this question and more in conversation with others in the Fulfilling Life interviews with me, Kelly Dahl, as your host. Hello, it's Kelly, and I'm here for another Fulfilling Life interview today with the great pleasure of having Michelle Ward with me, who I was able to meet in Portland and whose work I've been following, since I got started probably 2 years ago. I think I first came across you, Michelle, or longer than that even maybe, but it's great to talk with you again, and it was wonderful to meet you in Portland. So I would love for you first to share with everybody a little bit about you and the work that you do.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is so fun. I'm just honored to be included. So my name is Michelle Ward, and I'm known far and wide as the When I Grow Up coach. So really, I help creative women answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I help them really get out of their soul-sucking jobs and really believe and achieve that they can make a grown-up living doing what they love. And I found that and made my way to that because that's essentially what I had to do for myself back in 2005 when I had graduated from NYU with my BFA in musical theater a few years prior, and musical theater was just my whole life, like since I was 6 years old until I was about 26 years old, and I was just so focused on, being on Broadway, and I had, a whole bunch of glamorous and not so glamorous gigs along the way, and then I realized in my mid-20s I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and it wasn't to be an actor. I didn't like the business side and some of the lifestyle choices that were made for me with that career as a grown-up. And it was really devastating for me. It was an identity crisis and a quarter-life crisis and everything all rolled into one, because this was who I was for so long. So it just became unacceptable for me to not have a career for the next 35 years that I was going to be passionate about. And I set out to figure out what is my grown-up career that is going to excite me as much as acting. And I wanted to find something more grown-up, but I found life coaching. And I was like, oh, it's entrepreneurial and it's hippy-dippy and like all of these things, it's not what I'm looking for. But as I thought of being the coach that I needed at that point that really understood creative people, and I was not finding that, a career coach to help creative people, I couldn't deny the fact that I was really excited about it, and being an entrepreneur and being a life coach all really fit my values to a T. So that's kind of how I got there, and I've been working as the When I Grow Up coach since 2008, but I was able to leave my full-time job as an executive assistant in March of 2010, so I've been the When I Grow Up coach full-time for 3 years and change.
Yay, that's awesome.
Yay! The story in a nutshell.
That's awesome, and I love your story and how it comes from such a passionate, identity-filled career to asking that big question of what I want to do when I grow up, and then you help other people to answer that question. And I think when people fall into careers like that where they're finding something that they wanted, it's so rich and so beautiful. Because you answer it for yourself and then you help other people do what you needed, which is fantastic. The ultimate of service work, right?
Oh, yeah, it is.
So today we're talking about what it means to live a fulfilling life, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to share about that enormous question, and also to hear how work falls into that topic of life fulfillment. And in your introduction already spoke to that hugely, that work is such a part of your identity and how you find fulfillment. So we'll start with the big overarching question, Michelle, of what does it mean to you to live a fulfilling life?
I think at its core and simplified, and I feel this way about passionate work as well, it's just simply like being able to wake up in the morning and do the majority of the tasks and responsibilities you have to do throughout the day are things that you enjoy doing. I feel like that's it. If you're spending your time in a way that is in alignment with what you're passionate about and what gives you flow, and you're excited about and is aligned with your values and what you feel is your purpose or your mission, we're all going to have to do things that we don't like, but we want the majority of them to just be able to say, oh, I had a really good day. I got to, talk to a new friend, and I got to spread my message, and I got to work with a client and have her figure out what she wanted to be when she grew up. And I got to talk to, this group of people, and I got to write, a book or whatever it is that, I'm working on at the time. It's really exciting to know that even though my days really vary with what I have to do, it's all filled with things that really excite me. And I think that's what we're looking for in a fulfilling life, a fulfilling career. And I think that they're interconnected also.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned something in your introduction too about the values piece, and that life coaching spoke to your values, as musical theater probably did too, but to have that connection to your values, to me, the values piece is so connected to fulfillment as well. And if you can have that going on day to day, for most of it too, because that differentiation is important as well, because you're not going to enjoy every single moment all the time.
Right, of course, right. Of course.
Right.
Yeah, and it's always surprising, I think, how many of us don't take this time to really pinpoint and articulate our values. Like, we feel like we know them. And so they're kind of just very, like, in our heads, but probably very mushy. But it's when we really kind of sit down and say, like, what is it that motivates us, or what is it that gets us excited, or what is it that makes us want to get out of bed in the morning. If we're able to really take that and pinpoint that, then it's like, oh my God, oh, it's on paper. Oh, it's something I could follow. Oh, it's a way for me to make decisions. It's almost like this cheat sheet to your life and how you want it to go.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you do too. I talk with clients a lot about that. If you can get clear on that piece of it, then when you are confronted with a choice to make, you can say, well, does this go with how I want to feel and what I value and what my priorities are? And yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. But it becomes that sort of bedrock foundation for everything else, which just helps to bring that clarity in.
Absolutely. And I think it could also even point you to your roadblocks and maybe why you're having trouble with certain things. So I have as an example, I have a client that I've been working with on and off for like the last year or so. And she has been really, really, really struggling with monetizing her hobbies, really. It's what she's been looking to do. So she's gotten into, writing a blog and taking photos, and she feels like she needs to monetize it. And we ended up, like, she's just been banging her head against the wall for a few weeks. And we ended up going back to her values and looking at her values. And this is something I think we all need to revisit at least once a year. When she looked at what's important to her, money and making money was nowhere on the list. Wealth was on the list, but to her, wealth wasn't money. Yeah. It was like providing value. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, no wonder you've been dragging your feet and it feels icky and it's not right for you to open up an Etsy shop, talk to people or whatever. It's not important to you. So if you still want to make money from this, then not to say you can't, but we need to approach it in another way. It needs to be providing value in another way. It needs to be about connection. It needs to be about these other things that were values for her. So it just really was like, big flashing lights to why this isn't working. It's not a value. It's not a value for her.
Right. And it's so great that you can provide that for people to take the time to slow down and say, wait, what's really there? What's important to you? And when that disconnect is there, it can explain so many reasons why something isn't working.
Absolutely.
So back to the question of fulfillment. When you are doing things in your life that are meaningful and doing things that make you feel good, what are some of the things that you actually do? So what are the day-to-day things that do bring you that fulfillment?
Oh, for me personally?
For you personally, yeah.
Oh my gosh. A lot, thankfully. It's so nice. I mean, I always say that above everything, I'm a relationship builder and I'm a connector, and that's why I decided to be the When I Grow Up coach, for selfish reasons, because I thrive on getting to know people and building that relationship with them. So I try to make the majority of the things that I do during my day to really build these relationships, whether it's, doing this interview with you, whether it's, I published a book this summer with my co-author, who's also an artist. Her name's Jessica Swift, and the book is called The Declaration of You, and that stemmed from just Jess and I wanting to work together on something. And we're like, okay, we want to work together. What is this thing going to be? So that, even though it's a book and kind of a solitary thing, we made it into the anti-solitary thing. I write, I speak, I've been doing, presentations and speaking on panels more frequently recently. So that's a piece of what I'm doing. I have my clients, I have my one-on-one clients, I have my group clients in a group e-course that I run. And so any given time, it's that stuff, and then it's the personal stuff. It's spending time with my husband. It's going to my ukulele lessons twice a month. It's performing for me. It's writing my own songs. It's going to the theater, and so it's all of those pieces too of how do I want to spend my time? Who do I want to spend it with? And I live in Brooklyn, and I often feel like I want to take advantage of what the city has to offer. So a lot of times we're doing cultural things.
Right. So, I hear big themes of creativity and connection, and as much connection with people for sure is what helps you to feel fulfilled. And you've created this life for yourself where you live and what you do that just supports that completely, and making sure you get that into your day. And I find it fascinating. I don't think, I know about your book, and it's wonderful, and the community that you have created around the Declaration of You. But I don't think I ever fully heard that it just started from wanting to work with Jessica, which is such an interesting direction into creating a book, that it wasn't the concept and the ideas, which I'm sure were there too, but just wanting to work with somebody else as a big motivator, which speaks to that connection piece for you.
Yeah, that was the catalyst. I mean, it was so funny because Jess and I still can't decide and figure out how exactly we met each other. One of us found the other one's blog or Twitter account or something, and it was mutual, internet girl crush. And I remember Jess at the time ran this blog called Peekanoot, which was all about abundance and through her images, and I fell in love with her artwork and was oh my God, I want this girl to be my friend. And so I thought that I was stalking her, but when she tells the story, she's no, I found your stuff and I was stalking you. So we ended up connecting and working on a different group project together, and we ended up exchanging, this was really early when I started coaching sessions for custom artwork, and we wanted to keep working together. And at one point she sent me an email saying I just had this thought of us doing something together that would probably be an ebook of your coachy stuff and my illustrations, and have it be really inspirational but actionable for people. And what do you think about working on something like that together? And I literally started crying like a weirdo because I had in my head that I wanted to work with her on something, but I thought that she was so in her art at the time that I didn't think she'd be interested, and so I kind of kept it to myself. And I wrote her back, was I'm crying, I'm so excited. It's you went into my head, and that's how it started. It ended up being an e-course first because, and this plays to the value of relationships and community, because we got excited about working through this material live with a group of people and really being involved, as opposed to let's make this a book and just kind of ship it. We wanted to get more feedback and be really involved and get to know these women who were doing this material. So we ran the e-course, I think 3 times, and ended up putting an ebook together after the first course. And then that ebook essentially got purchased by F&W Media, and we just updated it and expanded on it. And it was crazy. Dream come true, but crazy. It all got about.
Yeah, but again, be being true to those values, right? And moving from that place of connection and creativity and what you're passionate about and taking the leaps forward somewhat before you're ready, but with support of somebody else, really when it comes together like that, it's just great things come out of it, which you have proved with the book, which is fantastic. So you're so clear on what is important to you for creating a life that is fulfilling. I would love to hear too, nobody's perfect, right? So what are some of the things that get in your way and that are some of the obstacles from staying true to what keeps you fulfilled?
Yeah, the relationship building and the connecting is like a blessing and a curse sometimes, because I could do it to a fault where all of a sudden I look at my week and I go, oh my God, there's no space to breathe. I'm just running from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing. And it's interesting because I know that there are a lot of people that have trouble saying yes. And there are people that are like, oh, I'm going to make this, the year of yes or the month of yes, and I'm going to say yes to everything. And for me, it's the opposite. Like I really have had to learn to say no, which is very kind of counterintuitive for me, because I want to meet all the people and do all the things and talk to everyone, but it's gotten to the point where I have to say no in order to just keep my space and my sanity and not get too overwhelmed. So that is definitely probably the main challenge that I have.
Yeah, you can't do it all, can you?
I can. I want to.
Yeah, and you wrote really eloquently on that recently on your blog, or I don't remember if it was on your website or just with your newsletter, but it was really well stated on protecting your boundaries and protecting your energy, and I'll put a link for people who might be interested in that. But it's tough. I think some people have trouble saying yes and putting themselves out there, but then there's also the opposite of saying no and protecting yourself and your own energy and making sure that you're going back to those values, right? You can't have good connections if you're burned out.
Absolutely. It's such a key point. Yeah, right. So now I've really, been strict with myself, and at this point I've had my virtual wizard who's worked with me for 2 years. I've said, like, you're going to field my requests. You're going to, people are going to come to you, and then you're going to come to me and say, that's a thing, what do you want? And then, you're going to put it on the calendar because you're, meaner about the calendar than I am. I'll look at my calendar and be like, well, I could squeeze this in. And she'll be like, no, you're booked through February. That's it. So I've kind of put that in place. And I've also, I think, and it's hard being a business owner, where I feel like, the opportunities are in interviews and people profiling you, and I would say yes to every single one of those when I first started my business, and I really do feel like it's helped me get to where I am, but I've had to kind of own up to the fact that I can't do every interview that I'm asked to do, and I really only I'm only kind of allowed to say yes to the things that really align with the message that I have and make me feel really excited about the person that I'm speaking with, and that would not make my head explode. It's like all of those pieces. Right. I now have I call it my yes bubble, and everything I have in the yes bubble has to have a check mark next to it in order for me to say yes, otherwise it's a no. So that's what I'm kind of working with moving forward.
Yeah, and it's the self-knowledge is so clear, too, to know that maybe you need somebody to be your intermediary for a while so that you can learn to do that, because it isn't something that comes easy, and that you do need to call in the support to say no sometimes, to have your assistant do that for you a little bit until it becomes easier maybe. And that's the self-knowledge piece, which has been coming up over and over again in these interviews, just knowing what you need, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you value, what's important, what's hard, so that then you can call in the support or boost yourself up to address whatever you need to address.
Yeah, and I think it's also asking for help, which, not to gender stereotype, but I feel like women have a particularly hard time with that. And I even hear this from my clients where, if they know they get accountability best with certain structure. Sometimes they feel like that structure is wrong or it's bad, or they shouldn't need an accountability buddy, as I like to call it, or they shouldn't need me emailing them at 3:00 every day to just say, "Did you write today?" Like, they're like, "Oh, well, that's bad. Well, that's no, it's not. If that's what you know you need to get on board with your writing habit, or to make sure your project gets finished, or to make sure that you're not booking yourself to the point where, you know, your head's going to explode and you just want to sleep for a month, then put that in place, and there's something wrong with that. We need to get that out of our heads too, I think. Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with, I find, maybe because I work with a lot of moms too, that there's a willingness to blow through that accountability boundary that might be there. Like, oh, well, yeah, I wanted to get this done, but, you know, my kids got sick, or my husband needed to stay late for work, so I'll just push it off and push it off and push it off. Which it takes learning to say, no, this is my priority, and other people are going to need to step in and help and do what needs to happen to make sure that my priority happens.
Right. It's that. I always love the analogy of being on the plane and having them say, you know, when the masks come down, you have to put your own first before the person next to you. Yeah. And I always have that visual in my head. I won't be good to anyone if I'm passed out.
Right.
I didn't put my own oxygen mask on. So that always kind of comes back to me when I find myself putting my own self-care, you know, at the bottom of the list. Yeah. And it happens, and we all slip up, and we all, you know, as much as we feel it's important, sometimes it's really, really hard to make those changes.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes feeling that extreme overwhelm and stress and a little bit of burnout maybe to say, like, okay, this can't happen anymore. Here's where I need to make some changes.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Well, Michelle, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I know that there is so much wisdom that you have shared about living a fulfilling life and finding fulfilling work as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks again for having me. This flew by so fun.
Do you have anything coming up that you want to share with anyone who might be watching this, who may have questions about finding a new career or...
Yeah, absolutely. I have some things that are like, we're planning on doing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, sort of stuff, but it's also like, I hope that it happens in time, so I don't want to spill the beans yet, but I would encourage everyone to go to whenIgrowupcoach.com and sign up for my newsletter, because you'll get my free video series, 10 Ways to Discover Work That Feels Like Play, and you'll also be notified when those things happen. I also have something called the When I Grow Up Coach Clubhouse that is all about community and goal setting and accountability, that I only open its doors once a year at this point. So I'm going to open that early December through early January. So that'll definitely be happening soon. And then there might be something good for Black Friday, Cyber Monday that you'd learn about if you're on the newsletter.
Awesome. And I can attest that there's just a lot of really useful, helpful information in your newsletter. So I encourage everybody to sign up.
Yay. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Michelle.